Thank you for joining us for this virtual pathway panel on scaling high school pathways. This panel is part of the 2022 STEM Summit, hosted jointly by the Massachusetts STEM Advisory Council, the Massachusetts Business Roundtable, and the University of Massachusetts Donahue Institute. This year, the summit will feature both in-person and virtual events for educators and employers across the Commonwealth to foster STEM education opportunities for all students and facilitate internships and greater business partnerships. Additional panels, videos, and one-pagers on best practices for starting an internship program, mentoring programs, curriculum, and more found in the virtual library. Today, we're going to spend, again, some time talking specifically about high-quality college and career pathways, speaking with our panel, who will soon introduce themselves, about how the Commonwealth has launched new opportunities for students and expanded on historical opportunities for students in our vocational pathways. So I'm going to start and ask Jennifer Gwatkin introduce herself.
Hi, good afternoon, or whatever time it is when this finds you. I'm Jennifer Gwatkin. I'm the Innovation Pathways Lead at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
And now I'm going to move to Jeff.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Roberge. I'm the Executive Director at the Mass Hire North Central Workforce Board, located up here in Leominster, Massachusetts. And our workforce region covers 26 towns in North Central Massachusetts, where we work collaboratively with our schools, our employers, and our job seekers here in the region. Nice to see everybody.
And Kevin.
Good day, folks. Kevin McCaskill, Assistant Superintendent in the Office of Secondary Schools for Boston Public Schools.
And Joe.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Langoni. I'm the principal of the Westfield Technical Academy in Westfield, Massachusetts. We are a city vocational technical high school.
And thanks to the panel for their participation today and the STEM Council for hosting us. We'll get started with the first question for Jennifer. A few years ago, to increase high school students' access to high-quality STEM pathways, the Commonwealth developed and launched a new program, Innovation Pathways. Can you provide us a short overview of the program, key components, and progress to date?
Sure. Thank you, Bob. First, it has been an honor and so rewarding to be involved with Innovation Pathways since their inception in 2017. Innovation Pathways are the outgrowth of a number of complementary bodies of work, began several years prior in Massachusetts that was overseen by the Governor's Workforce Skills Cabinet. We wanted to ensure that the new college and career pathways are carefully designed to offer high quality preparation for both college and career. So to that end, a two-phase designation process for pathways was designed collaboratively by a number of state agencies, including the Executive Office of Education, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, the Department of Higher Education, and the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development. Innovation Pathways are early career pathways that are based on robust partnerships between high schools and local mass hire workforce boards and employers. The goals of Innovation Pathways are to contextualize student learning, so connecting what students are learning in the classroom with the world beyond, better engage students in their high school experience, and lead students to opportunities for meaningful careers in broadly defined industry sectors that we know are in demand in the regional and state economy, and also guide students to relevant post-secondary education and training. Innovation Pathways are designed to increase equitable access by eliminating barriers to student participation. Designated programs proactively include students who historically have been underserved, students who are economically disadvantaged, students of color, students with disabilities, English language learners, and students who may be the first in their family to go to college. Innovation Pathways give students coursework and experience in specific high demand industries, such as information technology, engineering, healthcare, environmental and life sciences, and advanced manufacturing. Each student in an innovation pathway has an individual multi-year college and career and academic plan. We call that MyCap here in Massachusetts, that they themselves drive. Students in innovation pathways take 2 courses that are aligned with their industry sector they've chosen. That's what we call technical courses. They take at least 2 advanced courses, which can include dual enrollment through partnerships with an area college or university. advanced placement, international baccalaureate, project lead the way, or other college level courses. And finally, and this is what we like to call the hallmark of Innovation Pathways, students complete a 100-hour internship or capstone as their culminating immersive work-based experience. As I mentioned before, in 2017, the Executive Office and DESE established a two-part designation process that's actually approved by the DESE Commissioner. In the inaugural year of Innovation Pathways back in 2018, there were 7 districts that received the Innovation Pathways designation. Fast forward to today, well, April 6th, 2022 is when I'm sharing this information. There are Innovation Pathways in 49 schools across 43 districts. There's a total of 121 pathways across those 5 industry sectors I mentioned before. 22 of those are brand new this year, which I think is extremely commendable given the obstacles that everyone's been facing during the time of COVID. And we're reaching over 3,000 students through Innovation Pathways programming. We are just rounding out the 5th year of designations, and we'll be announcing new designations shortly. It has been exciting to see Innovation Pathways grow and extend purposeful opportunities to students across the Commonwealth, from the Berkshires all the way out to the Cape and the Islands, equipping high school students with skills and experiences inside and outside the classroom to make informed decisions about their futures. We are hopeful that Innovation Pathways, with continued support from the state, will extend to more and more schools, positively transforming more and more students' career and life trajectories. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen, for that great overview. We certainly have made a lot of progress with your leadership.
Oh, thank you, Bob.
Jeff, in your role as leader of Mass Higher North Central Board, can you provide us your perspective on the role and the benefits of students gaining STEM work-based learning experiences?
I can't say enough about the importance around STEM education here in our region. We've been very fortunate that we have worked very closely with our high schools, in particular Fitchburg High School, with regards to their Innovation Pathways programming. We know here in the region that advanced manufacturing is one of our priority industries with our Central Workforce Blueprint. And we know that building these types of programs for our next generation of workforce is imperative for the longevity of the health here in the region with regards to manufacturing. You know, our relationship with Fitchburg High School goes back a couple of years now. When we initially went into partnering with Fitchburg High School around the Innovation Pathways program, almost 20% of Fitchburg High School seniors identified entering into the workforce post-graduation from high school. So we knew that there was a huge need in that particular school. I mean, 20% is a huge number with regards to the number of seniors who during a survey indicated they want to enter into the workforce. We started working on an Innovation Pathways program with them, targeting advanced manufacturing. What we did is we worked with them on that programming, and what we found is in the first year of implementing Innovation Pathways in Fitchburg, 36 students registered immediately to enter into that programming. As part of that, we had community partners. We had great manufacturers who jumped on board. Grief Incorporated, Micron Solutions, very well-respected manufacturing entities here in North Central Massachusetts, immediately signed on to work with the school and the workforce board around building out this programming. Students were introduced to things like 3D engravers, cutters, 3D printers. They were also introduced to a Doobot robotic arm, water jet cutters, injection molding machines were introduced to these students. And then most recently, the relationship has grown so much that a couple of weeks ago, we held 3 prep sessions with Fitchburg High School's juniors and seniors to get them ready for manufacturing internships. We had 14 students participate. They met with 4 employers. So we've expanded the amount of employers who are working with us around these internships for the next generation of these folks. Garlock Printing, Rochelle O'Toole, New England Wire, Boatwell Owens, and almost all of the students who took part in that program were offered internships. So the program is growing. We fully support the Innovation Pathways program. Fitchburg has been a huge partner in introducing these opportunities to young folks. So we're excited about the future here in North Central.
Joe, I would put Joe and Kevin on the spot a little bit. They both have been very actively involved with our vocational students in what we would identify as co-op experience. Could you guys add a little bit about your perspective on co-op experience or school-based lab experiences for your students?
Well, speaking to Jeff's point about manufacturing in our region, Bob, as you know, in the greater Westfield area, we have something on the order of 50 manufacturing businesses. Typically, all of the seniors that are in my manufacturing program enter co-op in the second semester of their junior year, work throughout the summer, stay in co-op throughout their senior year, and the last 2 or 3 years, easily 10%, 15% are remaining in the workforce upon graduation, and their co-op placements are becoming their full-time jobs. And the earning potential is phenomenal. You know, right out of the chute, you're talking about a $70,000, $75,000 a year salary, and very frequently opportunities for unlimited overtime. Some of these other kids are doing a split. They're financing their education while they're working. Others are going out and entering engineering programs such as the one at Stick and then coming back into the industry. So I think co-op is a very key piece of making sure that this pipeline stays open.
Kevin, any updates?
Oh, absolutely. And Joe hit it on the head. These opportunities are priceless. When students get those opportunities to get out into the field, to see the actual feel of real work, it is so tangible. And, you know, I'm gonna go even a little bit deeper when we start looking at diversifying certain fields. When we over here in Boston, when we look at schools such as Madison Park, which has 97% students of color, and we look at some of the fields which do not reflect that diversity, it's great to get our kids into those fields. One, so those employers can actually see the worth of not just tokenism of just getting a Black or brown student in, but someone who is highly skilled, and we actually become the farm system for that particular industry going forward. So, but they have the stories, and I think one of the things that are highlights in an educator's career, hearing the students' glee and excitement and enthusiasm about what they're doing and how they plan to make this a career. One of the things we've really tried to do is dismiss the word jobs. Jobs is temporary. We wanted to use that term careers. And when you hear young people talking in terms of careers, that's the power and the value of co-op.
Thank you. I'm glad you talked about careers, because one of the additional programs that the Commonwealth has launched as part of building out alternative pathways for students to consider is called early college. And I'll give a quick overview of early college. Early college, like our other pathway programs, go through a designation process where our schools apply to a joint committee from higher education and Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that they are going to meet criteria to serve those students. In the case of early college, it requires that students are on a path to achieve a minimum of 12 college credits, i.e. 4 courses very often, have deep college and career advising, so they're prepared to make informed decisions as they complete, gain specific college experiences like being on campus, participating in campus activities, getting exposure to the culture of campuses in their community, getting exposure to staff, and certainly preparing for college. That means development of things like financial aid applications and applications for colleges, and seeing themselves as having a major as they arrive at college. And I think, as Kevin so passionately pointed out, seeing college as a step in a career and a potential of continued education. In your role, Kevin, working with Madison Park Technical Vocational High School, your school was one of the early adopters of early college, adding that to the potential of your students, as did Joe in Westfield. Can you talk a little bit about the early college program and why you felt it was important for your school to embark on the hard work in developing that program?
Definitely, again, to create access and opportunity, Bob. One of the things we did not want cost to be a barrier. We did not want to be perceptions to be a barrier, and that what you were learning, at Madison Park could translate into a post-secondary opportunity in higher ed. And so applying for this and really pushing it, seeing that, Boston, everyone knows, it's an academic town. And vocational education tends to take a back seat to that. But showcasing that this was possible for Madison Park students, it just became a rallying cry. And let me tell you, it has been just so successful in going forward. When you look at over a 6-year period in which there was an initial relationship with a local community college, we had 15 students who received 45 transferable credits. Fast forward to 2021, you had 83 students participating for 741 credits, transferable credits, all aligned to their programs of study here at Madison Park. So it's been a tremendous boon. And to boot, Madison Park has the only 3 students in the history of Boston Public Schools to receive their associate's degree prior to their diploma. So to say that it has been something of a benefit and a value add has been more than that. But it really was to provide a couple of things, to provide access and opportunity for students to obtain post-secondary credits and to make post-secondary opportunities possible. It also reduced the cost. It also ensured the pathways aligned to high demand industry skills and standards with those expectations, Bob, that you spoke about, but also having students exposed to more careers within a particular industry. But most importantly, provide supports that ensure successful transitions and completions of the program. We have dedicated staff to the program, which is key, but also the reliability of flexibility in scheduling. As Joe can attest to, vocational scheduling can get kind of hairy, especially with these types of programs. But again, that type of flexibility with collaboration and cooperation of the early college staff, as well as the teaching staff and administration, it really provides great opportunity for our students. Consistent monitoring of student progress, but most importantly, especially with COVID, their well-being going forward. And we also use it as an outstanding recruitment tool. When you're sitting and you're recruiting students and parents are hearing about this occurring in a vocational school, they get really excited because it really destroys the myth that vocational education is a secondary source of or approach to education. So it has been really a great thing here in Boston, not only, with Madison Park and my role as in the Office of Secondary Schools, having a Charlestown High School, having Dearborn as early college. And Jennifer, I know we're looking for some good news in a few days of other schools going early college. So it has been a tremendous boon, really, to students of color and underserved populations here in Boston.
So yeah, thanks for that passionate review of early college. I should have noted we now have 50 high schools that are participating in our early college student, and we will soon be over 5,000 students participating in early college. And I think we're on a trajectory potentially for next year between the growth of our early college and innovation pathways to be getting close to 10,000 students. Joe, both Jeff up in Fitchburg is involved in early college, and Joe's also involved in a unique model, Westfield Promise, that it links both the technical high school as well as the traditional high school. I don't know if either of you had any insights or thoughts about early colleges in your community.
Well, just to piggyback on a couple of things that Kevin said, I think one of the boons to having this opportunity available is that it provides access to students who might not otherwise have that access. I mean, our first group of students from the technical academy that participated, almost to a student, said in conversations with me and other folks around here that if they hadn't had the opportunity, they might not have ever been able to vision themselves as a college student, for a whole variety of reasons, not the least of which is, their economic situation. Another thing that I think it's really fostered, certainly been my experience here, is that it forces public education and higher education to try to come to terms with speaking the same language to each other, and to realize that in the end, we all have the same bottom line, right? Which is to ensure that we have an intelligent and skilled workforce to support the Commonwealth going forward. And sometimes it had been my experience that got lost in the translation because we didn't really take advantage of opportunities to get around the same table and try to figure out what that communication should sound like. So I think that's been a very big plus from my perspective, at least, as well.
And I just want to echo what the two gentlemen before me spoke about, in particular, when you talk about, up here in North Central, we have a very diverse community. We want to make sure that opportunities are available to our everybody in all of our different communities. And this program certainly offers that. In particular to, Kevin, as you mentioned, or Joseph, as you mentioned, the connection between higher ed and the high school speaking the same language about an intelligent workforce. I mean, that is a key factor here about building a sustained workforce, an equitable workforce, a workforce that is afforded the opportunity to explore. And as Kevin, as you've mentioned earlier, about also being offered that opportunity for those hands-on experiences, all of this matters. And certainly to the communities here in our region, the folks may have never known about these opportunities. So making sure that they're available and building this out is across our entire region is paramount to the health of the community as a whole. That's ultimately what our goal is. So gentlemen, I echo your sentiments as well.
Jennifer, I know that you've been very involved in growing Pathways, and Jennifer was very involved in the launch of all of our concepts. Do you have anything to add, particularly around the idea of innovation pathways and students and parents and post-secondary work?
Bob, I apologize. You cut out briefly as you're in the middle of your question. Would you mind repeating?
So the question was, can you give us some examples of innovation pathways and how they're informing parents and informing students, but also maybe the perspective of the importance of post-secondary partnering for innovation pathways? I know it's a key component as you review program designation.
One of my favorite things in working on innovation pathways is speaking with students, and oftentimes we'll get a chance to engage with parents. At a recent convening that Senator Cronin put on in Worcester, there's actually a parent there, and I got to talk to her about the opportunities that her child has encountered through innovation pathways. It's just the exposure, again, that they wouldn't otherwise get, and especially in our academic and comprehensive high schools, where so many of the students may not have had access to the occupationally focused programming that's offered at our vocational schools. I think in designing innovation pathways, we wanted to give students some of the experiences that they would get at a vocational school, not to the extent of the 900 hours of shop, the very occupationally focused, but giving them a sense of the range of opportunities that exist within an industry sector. And in conjunction with MyCap, that's the career and academic plan that I mentioned earlier. It's the intentionality of that, of giving students the awareness opportunities, all the way exposure, all the way through the immersion along the way. And for the programs that leverage dual enrollment to achieve or to get at the advanced coursework, having students in innovation pathways get those credits, free of charge to the families, giving them a leg up on their higher education. I mean, what a great experience to be able to set foot on a college campus or get those rigorous courses and have the immersive work experiences, connecting all the dots, like what's going on in the classroom with, what awaits them once they leave the classroom. And having a path forward, I mean, that's something that is critical. I, for one, did not have a path forward in high school and could have very much benefited from innovation pathways.
Well, I think you've done quite well, Jennifer.
Somehow I found myself in a good place with good people.
I would just note a couple of things. One, the importance that I think of the theme that you all keep mentioning, which is students seeing themselves in STEM, and that is something that the STEM Council champions on a constant basis. Too, I think the importance and recognizing that there are many ways for students to get college level courses, whether that's dual enrollment, whether that's by taking things like AP or Project Lead the Way that might allow an exam or a review process for them to get college credits. Or I should also note that the Commonwealth has 16 articulation agreements for students who are in our vocational pathway programs to then have those experiences translated at our community colleges for college credits, as well as if they're gaining industry credentials, of those additionally being available for college credits. And I'll just put a plug in of the importance of college level courses, because we know students who arrive college ready at their higher education destination are much more likely to persist, gain their degree, and be successful in filling the many, many jobs that the Commonwealth currently has, but will have into the future in a growing STEM field. I have a question for Joe, and I'll just frame it. You know, in the last 5 years, the Commonwealth has also continued to support the expansion through technology and equipment and support of planning for our vocational programs and growing the base of our vocational programs along with our early college programs and innovation pathways. I should note on a trajectory, a planning trajectory, so that by 2028, half of the students in the Commonwealth would have the opportunity to be participating in some types of organized high quality college and career pathways. But at your school, Joe, you took off on a very unique voyage to meet employers' needs in your region. Could you tell us a little bit about the program that the Academy launched, the role of the Academy and why it was important to launch that program, and kind of give us a sense of the history and where it may be on that program?
So full disclosure, I can't take credit for the beginnings of all of this because it happened before my arrival in 2016. This began as the baby of our current superintendent, Stefan Zaborowski, who was my predecessor here at the Academy. And it speaks to what you just mentioned, Bob. This was our response to overtures on the part of our local business and industry partners at Barnes Airport and the 104th Fighter Wing, right? In conversations, early conversations with Stefan and with the then city administration, they outlined the fact that even at the time, there was a gap in terms of well-trained, available aviation maintenance technicians to service the businesses that have very large and very active facilities on the grounds of Barnes Airport, the largest one being Gulfstream. And our response, the response of the city and the Academy, was to, number one, put together a program advisory committee of these important constituents who are here in the community, to hire staff, to think about what curriculum was going to look like, to figure out what the process was going to be, because in addition to trying to create a program which would ultimately be a Chapter 74 approved program, there's the whole layer of the federal aspect, because there are federal regulations that govern opening schools and giving agency certificates and curriculum and so on and so forth. So between 2013 and 2015, we've got most of those details figured out. And when I arrived in 2016, we had already admitted our first cohort of freshmen. In addition to that, we had to figure out how to repurpose space here at the Academy for the classroom portions of the AMT curriculum. In accordance with FAA guidelines and regulations, we had to acquire and outfit space at the airport so that students would have the opportunity to work on live aircraft, which is a curriculum requirement of the FAA. So there were a lot of moving parts, and many of those moving parts required a significant outlay of cap. We were the beneficiaries of the generosity of the city of Westfield for sure, relative to having a hangar available to us at the airport and early financial support for the program. And as you know, Bob, we were also the recipient of a $250,000 capital skills grant in the very first round. In fact, that's how you and I met when I came down to Boston for the awarding of the grant. So it's been an interesting process, but all of it happened as a result of being in touch with and having communication with our local business and industry partners. You may have heard me say it in our weekly radio show. I've been saying it since I arrived as principal here in 2016. I consider the Westfield Technical Academy, as I do any tech school, to be a public utility, right? This utility is brought to you by you, as I always tell the folks here in Westfield. And as a result, it's incumbent upon us to be attentive to and responsive to the needs of the community. And that was a very good example. One of the things that's happened as a result of having a few years under our belt is that we've noticed that many of our graduates from that program don't necessarily go on to become licensed AMT technicians, even though there are plenty of very good and very lucrative opportunities available to them here in Greater Westfield and elsewhere. What they've done is they've used it as a springboard into military service, into avionics, aviation engineering, kids going to school at Embry-Riddle University of Wichita. We've had applicants to the Air Force Academy. So the experience has also sort of identified to us that there are possibilities going forward of expanding this, branching it out. We even have talked around here about the possibility of 10 years, 15 years down the road, maybe even sooner, what would an aviation high school, a full aviation high school look like, which had many of those other discrete areas that we're not currently doing under the same roof. Air traffic control, for example, aviation administration, right? So being responsive to the needs, to a particular need of the community, has also given rise to conversations among us and with our partners about going forward, how can we continue to respond to different needs as they arise, and what's that going to look like? None of this would have been possible without the generosity of the Commonwealth and the generosity of our partners relative to the capital expenditure, which for a program like this is extremely significant.
Thanks. Thanks for that great. Kevin, you've launched some new programs in your history in vocational education. Could you talk a little bit about your experience of launching new programs to meet community needs?
I think one interesting one that has just recently come out is the Smart Building Technology program, which was from Roxbury Community College, but really changing. And what we did more so not create, but really retool an old program into a more upgraded and sleek and sexy version of smart buildings. And it was changing the old building and property maintenance program into facilities management, because that's where it is. The world is moving away from handymen, where you just know how to paint and nail a few things together, to building automation, which is crucial in the advent of the new buildings and smart buildings. So really upgrading that program to meet the emerging needs of a new industry. And so those are things that we're looking at, Bob, really retooling what industry is all about, getting our HVAC program involved in these new technologies as well in building automation, where you're not just learning to get your EPA 608 or a hot work certification, you're really understanding building automation, and you're learning how to code, because that's what the basis of all these new smart buildings is all about, is computer technology. So really revamping programs to really meet the current need of industry. And as I said earlier, it's really to provide exposure for underserved communities to get into these fields, because so many times when you're not hip to the new technologies that are going on, you've never been exposed, and especially in an expensive city such as Boston, it really becomes a social economic issue. And we want our students to be able to make informed decisions on where they want to live. Why? Because they have the marketable skills and knowledge base to really maintain gainful employment here in the city of Boston. But also looking at with our computer programming and web development, getting those students involved in our heavy trades areas. Why? Because heavy trade areas, again, with the advent of smart buildings, they need programmers. And instead of going to a high-tech program, we're seeing some of our programming students going into construction industries, going into energy management industries. So really rethinking the whole sense of programming is huge. The fields are so vast, and really giving students as much opportunity in diverging and emerging fields as we possibly can. And it's been a tremendous, tremendous boon. And not just at Madison Park, but as you know, Bob, more and more schools are expanding, and Jen knows as well, with the innovation pathways of providing these opportunities to our more traditional schools. And it's really beginning to pay off. And to Joe's point, 10 to 15 years from now, who knows? I mean, we may have three, possibly 2 or 3 tech schools here in Boston, with schools really specializing. And Joe, I love that idea of the aviation high school. You'll just have to be principal of both schools, Joe. But, but these are things that are coming out of the initiatives coming from DESE, coming from EOE. And Bob, the work, and again, to give you and Jen a plug, it's the work that you two are doing to support these initiatives has been just the impetus of growth. So thank you.
Well, thank you. We are coming up on time. I think I'll start with Jeff, and if you have any closing remarks or thoughts about what you've experienced in the last 5 years and pathways related to your high schools.
You know, first and foremost, I just want to thank you, Bob. I want to thank my Jennifer. I want to thank Joseph, Kevin, for taking the time today for all of us to have, this meaningful conversation. Here in our region, it's certain, manufacturing, biomedical manufacturing, transportation, logistics, certainly our healthcare sector here in our region. All of these industries require a trained workforce. The introduction and expansion to opportunity to all populations learning about these industries, access to automation, robotics, all of the things that center around STEM education, innovation pathways, access to opportunity. My final thoughts are, let's keep funding this the best way we can. Let's work together as a workforce system and an educational system as a whole to offer these opportunities to our next generation of workforce, because they will drive the economy here in Massachusetts. And the Commonwealth offers a wealth of opportunity for folks, and we as a system, if we continue to support it, we're innovators of the future, regionally and across the nation. So thank you all. Thank you very much for having me here today. I appreciate it.
And how about you, Jen?
Well, it's hard to follow, Jeff. That was quite the closing remarks. Really appreciate all of that, and echoing you, this opportunity to be here with such great leaders. It's been a journey since I first started working on both innovation pathways in early college back in 2017. It was the first time the agencies had gotten together to do this work. So learning to speak each other's language, and always with the idea of students in mind, that this is about opportunities for them, opportunities they might not otherwise have had, seeing themselves as college going and in these high skills, high demand industries, and watching this grow, getting to work with schools as partners from when they first meet with me and say, oh, is this even possible? And envisioning what ingredients they need, the partnerships with Mass Hire, partnerships with industry, just watching the key players come together and around this vision. It's been extremely exciting, and this is just the beginning. So I look forward to coming back in subsequent years and giving updates, and actually having students come and join us to talk about how innovation pathways, early college, these fabulous Chapter 74 programs have influenced their life trajectories. Thank you again for this opportunity.
You're on mute, Bob.
I'm not sure there's a better or more accurate closing remark after the last few years of Bob. You are on, I guess we're right up on the time, as I note in the bottom right. So I want to thank the panel in behalf of the Skills Cabinet, STEM Council, for celebrating 2022 STEM Summit. Forward to seeing you at events. Appreciate all of your work to make opportunities for students across the Commonwealth. So with that, that brings us to a close. Have a great day. Happy STEM Summit.